There are things I wish. I wish I knew a lot more about science, and I wish I knew how to cure illnesses and, prevent fights and wars and things like that. I wish I knew how to do things in such a way that people didn't starve to death, or there wasn't violence or crime or things like that. I have a lot of wishes, things I wish for, I guess one could say I have a lot of wishful thinking, too. And sometimes when I think about everything I wish for, and I get to thinking about the limits, sometimes it makes me feel sad. I feel sad because I can't do a lot to help people. People I care about, even when I see strangers go through things. Whenever I see someone in trouble, I try to do what I can to help. But I'm limited. And sometimes, there are times in life, and I know this, where people try to help people, and sometimes they make things worse because they don't know what they're doing. Like someone who doesn't know what they're doing, and then they jump into something, and it causes more damage. They make a situation worse. That's why I think it's important to learn things. I think it's important to develop some type of skills. I learned years ago, for example, how to do CPR. I have to get recertified in that, but I actually had a certification for it. I still remember how to do that. I've never had to use it, but if a situation came up, I would. But the thing is that my feelings, this is what counts. It's what I feel, that I want to help. Everything I do is geared in that direction. When I make my videos, I hope that some of the ideals might be useful to people. I don't know. I never really know if anything I say helps anybody. But that's what I want. And I kind of think, when I think about, a kind of religiousness about things, I don't think in a traditional sense, but I think a kind of ultimate ideal issue of, like, that people should do things to help other people. People should do things to improve the quality of life for everyone, for all the people in this world, not just this little small group that we're in, this sort of them and us type thing. It's just for everybody. If we could do things to make life better for everybody. That's why I don't really get involved in debates and fights, because I don't think that is very useful. I don't think it helps things. I don't think that putting other people down for what they believe or for what they don't believe helps. I think, I think the things I say would probably be classified as being somewhat corny, but it's just the way I think about things. To me, that's my feeling about things. That's what's is the thing. I'm a person who does pay attention to my feelings. I was criticized very heavily by a particular YouTube user who kept more or less almost basically almost being like a terrorist to me, because he was just bothering me and harassing me because I kept talking about my feelings. I kept saying that I trust my feelings and I believe in what I feel. But I think that my feelings are important. Even if I get criticism for it, I think it's important to care about other people, even if I'm heavily criticized for it. I guess his ideal was that people shouldn't have feelings, that we should be purely scientific. We should just be pure rationalists with no emotions or feelings or anything. And I think the way in which I was really upset him a lot. And I think, he subscribed to me at one time, and then he unsubscribed. And, and I think he left with a tremendous amount of bitterness and anger toward me. And I just thought, what could I have done that really set him off? But I think some people are that way. They don't like people who have feelings. They don't like people who have emotions. They don't like people who care about other people, who talk about that sort of thing. But you know what? One thing I'm going to do is always have feelings, because if the day that I don't have emotions, I'd become a robot then. Really, seriously. And that's not what I am. I'm a human being. And being a human being means you have feelings. You have an intellect, yes, that's important. Intellect, being intelligent, problem solving and all that. But you also have to have emotions. You have to have compassion. You know. You have to put those two things together. It's like what Aldous Huxley said in this interview I was watching, where he was mentioning this to Mike Wallace. He says, you know, these two things have to be important. They have to be together. You know, compassion and intellect. Because if you just have compassion, you know, but you're not very intelligent, you could do a lot of things well-meaning, but you could do things that are harmful. And if you have only intellect without any compassion, you can do a lot of things that also can be harmful. You have to have the two things together. Be intelligent, yes, that's important, but also have feelings. You have to have compassion, and you have to have intelligence. And that's all I wanted to say. Just wanted to make a video and put it up and talk about what I was thinking.